following the aim of her feet. Thus she must have crossed the bridge along with some of the crowd, must have landed on the jetty, and reached the front of the tent without really knowing what she was doing. Ah yes, her passport. She had quite forgotten that. But she had it by her, quite in order, given to her in a fit of tardy remorse by Demoiselle Candeille, the intimate friend of one of the most influential members of the Revolutionary Government of France. She took the passport from the bosom of her dress and handed it to the man in the official dress. "Your name?" he asked peremptorily. "Celine Dumont," she replied unhesitatingly, for had she not rehearsed all this in her mind dozens of times, until her tongue could rattle off the borrowed name as easily as it could her own? Servitor to Citizeness Desiree Candeille. The man, who had very carefully been examining the paper the while, placed it down on the table deliberately in front of him and said: "Celine Dumont? Eh la mere! What tricks are you up to now?" "Tricks? I don't understand," she said quietly, for she was not afraid. The passport was en règle. She knew she had nothing to fear. "Oh, but I think you do," retorted the official with a sneer, "and 'tis a mighty clever one, I'll allow. Celine Dumont, ma foi! Not badly imagined, ma petite mere, and all would have passed off splendidly. Unfortunately, Celine Dumont, servitor to Citizeness Desiree Candeille, passed through these barriers along with her mistress not half an hour ago." And with a long, grimy finger he pointed to an entry in the large book which lay open before him, and wherein he had apparently been busy making notes of the various passengers who had filed past him. Then he looked up with a triumphant leer at the calm face of Marguerite. She still did not feel really frightened, only puzzled and perturbed, but all the blood had rushed away from her face, leaving her cheeks ashen white, and pressing against her heart, until it almost choked her. "You are making a mistake, citizen," she said very quietly. "I am Citizeness Candeille's maid. She gave me the passport herself, just before I left for England. If you will ask her the question, she will confirm what I say, and she assured me that it was quite en règle." But the man only shrugged his shoulders and laughed derisively. The incident evidently amused him, yet he must have seen many of the same sort. In the far corner of the tent Marguerite seemed to discern a few moving forms, soldiers she thought, for she caught sight of a glint like that of steel. One or two men stood close behind the official at the desk, and the sentinels were to the right and left of the tent. With an instinctive sense of appeal, Marguerite looked round from one face to the other, but each looked absolutely impassive and stolid, quite uninterested in this little scene, the exact counterpart of a dozen others, enacted on this very spot within the last hour. "Eh la, la petite mere," said the official in the same tone of easy persiflage which he had adopted all along. "But we do know how to concoct a pretty lie, aye, and so circumstantially too. Unfortunately, it was Citizeness Desiree Candeille herself who happened to be standing just where you are at the present moment, along with her maid, Celine Dumont, both of whom were specially signed for and recommended as perfectly trustworthy by no less a person than Citoyen Chauvelin of the Committee of Public Safety." "But I assure you that there is a mistake," pleaded Marguerite earnestly. "'Tis the other woman who lied. I have my passport and..." "A truce on this," retorted the man peremptorily. "If everything is as you say, and if you have nothing to hide, you'll be at liberty to continue your journey to-morrow, after you have explained yourself before the citizen governor. Next one now, quick!" Marguerite tried another protest, just as those others had done whom she had watched so mechanically before. But already she knew that that would be useless, for she had felt that a heavy hand was being placed on her shoulder, and that she was being roughly led away. In a flash she had understood and seen the whole sequel of the awful trap which had all along been destined to engulf her as well as her husband. What a clumsy, blind fool she had been! What a miserable antagonist to the subtle schemes of a past master of intrigue as was Chauvelin! To have enticed the Scarlet Pimpernel to France was a great thing. The challenge was clever, the acceptance of it by the bold adventurer a foregone conclusion. But the master stroke of the whole plan was done when she, the wife, was enticed over too, with the story of Candeille's remorse and the offer of the passport. Fool, fool that she was! And how well did Chauvelin know feminine nature! How cleverly he had divined her thoughts, her feelings, the impulsive way in which she would act! How easily he had guessed that, knowing her husband's danger, she, Marguerite, would immediately follow him. Now the trap had closed on her, and she saw it all, when it was too late. Percy Blakeney in France, his wife a prisoner, her freedom and safety in exchange for his life. The hopelessness of it all struck her with appalling force, and her sense reeled with the awful finality of the disaster. Yet instinct in her still struggled for freedom. Ahead of her, and all around, beyond the tent and in the far distance, there was a provocative, alluring darkness. If only she could get away, only could reach the shelter of that remote and sombre distance, she would hide and wait, not blunder again, no, no! She would be prudent and wary, if only she could get away. One woman's struggles against 5 men! It was pitiable, sublime, absolutely useless. The man in the tent seemed to be watching her with much amusement for a moment or two, as her whole graceful body stiffened for that absurd and unequal physical contest. He seemed vastly entertained at the sight of this good-looking young woman striving to pit her strength against 5 sturdy soldiers of the Republic. "Allons, that will do now," he said at last, roughly. "We have no time to waste. Get the jade away, and let her cool her temper in number 6 until the citizen governor gives further orders. Take her away!" he shouted more loudly, banging a grimy fist down on the table before him, as Marguerite still struggled on with the blind madness of despair. "Pardi! Can none of you rid us of that turbulent baggage?" The crowd behind were pushing forward. The guard within the tent were jeering at those who were striving to drag Marguerite away. These latter were cursing loudly and volubly, until one of them, tired out, furious and brutal, raised his heavy fist, and with an obscene oath brought it crashing down upon the unfortunate woman's head. Perhaps, though it was the work of a savage and cruel creature, the blow proved more merciful than it had been intended. It had caught Marguerite full between the eyes. Her aching senses, wearied and reeling already, gave way beneath this terrible violence. Her useless struggles ceased, her arms fell inert by her side, and losing consciousness completely, her proud, unbendable spirit was spared the humiliating knowledge of her final removal by the rough soldiers, and of the complete wreckage of her last lingering hopes. End of chapter 17.